Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Scaling Stateside podcast. I'm David Rose, the founder and CEO at USXP. Along with my co-founder, Matt Oxley, we are on a mission to help founders from the UK and Europe better understand the US expansion and entrepreneurial journey. We have guests that include founders and VCs to help tell their stories and help disseminate this information around best practices and pitfalls. And today we're very excited to have a founder from the UK who's been through the entire life cycle of this journey previously. Alex Packham, the founder of ContentCal, who's now the CEO at JAAQ. He's based in London. Alex, introduce yourself. Welcome to the show. Please tell us a little bit about your background and please tell us where you are in the world today.
Totally. Thank you so much, guys, for having me on. I'm really looking forward to this. So where am I in the world? I live in Farnham in Surrey. So if you're in America or anywhere outside of, I guess, London or that belt, you'll have no idea on earth where that is. But it's about an hour south of London. And I lived in London before that for about 14 years, 15 years. So I kind of did my London stint and did what lots of people often do here is move out to the countryside and get some fresh air and go into London a couple of times a week and travel internationally a lot. So home is Farnham, Surrey. My background is, I'm an entrepreneur, through and through, I suppose. I have been that way inclined since I was 14 years old. It's the age-old story of people who have always sold stuff in playgrounds at school and always been interested in the idea of building businesses. My dream was not to be an astronaut. It was not to be a footballer. It was not to be a sports star. It was to be a person in business, be an entrepreneur before I even knew what that word really meant. So my main business that I've built, the kind of one that I'm known for, is ContentCal, which you can see very loudly and proudly behind me. This was a sign that we had at lots of expos that I managed to keep before we sold, which was in storage somewhere that we used to do, pin the post on the calendar, which was really fun as a competition. And that was a business I built over the course of about 8 years, did the full journey, as you said, which ended up exiting to Adobe in December 2021. And then I've built a bunch of other businesses within that. Before that, after that, during that, and really love the concept of creating companies from scratch, seeing them through those early stages. And then obviously, as you go through the process, building those companies into something more substantial. And then, like I said, very lucky to go through an exit process with Adobe, which taught me a huge amount about, that end-to-end piece, like whether it's the product market fit stage through to M&A, through to doing 3 years at Adobe and doing an earnout, in a Californian based business, which was really a massive global company, right? $20 billion turnover business. It was a $300 billion market cap when we sold to them. I think it was like the 30th biggest company in the world by market cap when we sold. So incredible journey. And then outside of kind of my operator side of life, running companies, I've invested personally in about 60 different businesses as an angel investor, advise funds, advise companies, and all that good stuff. So that's me in a nutshell.
Oh, great. Well, take us back to the very beginning, Alex. We always like to ask our guests because it's super interesting because with the entrepreneur kind of mindset and background. What was your very first paying job?
I've got two answers for this. And it's interesting because I don't think I've been asked that for such a long time. So one is I had a paper round. And that makes me feel old because there are going to be people on listening to this, I'm sure, just like Jeff, that won't even know what that is. So I, in my local area, took physical newspapers that were like the free community newspaper, and I was paid like literally like £8 or something, which is like $10 to deliver this to like 50, maybe not that many, 20 homes in my local area. And that's hilarious saying that because now I literally, for the first time ever out loud, feel old because literally some people would not know what that even is. So that was my first actual ever paid job. My second answer, which is my first entrepreneurial hit, was that when I was younger, SIM cards for phones, believe it or not, and like the whole kind of vibe of mobile phones being accessible to everybody was still quite new. And I can't remember why, but O2, which is a phone network in the UK, had this free thing online where you could get six SIM cards for free. If you topped it up £10 a month, so you didn't even have a subscription back in the day, you'd put £10 on and you'd get like 200 free minutes and 200 free texts. And it was like a loyalty thing, obviously. And so I got 6 of these SIM cards for free, and I managed to find 5 or 6 ways, different email addresses to get like 50 of them or something. And I used to go and sell them for like £20 each in the playground. And I was like, jig. So those are my two answers. You can see the differences between the two. The paper round, I didn't last long. I think I did it for 3 months, and then I did the typical thing, which most people did, which was like hide them somewhere and just sit for like half an hour because I didn't like that. And then the entrepreneur thing carried on forever. So you can see why. You can see which one lasted.
Those are the proper building blocks of an entrepreneurial career. That's fantastic.
The reason, sorry.
Oh, sorry, Matt, go ahead.
No, the reason why I'm laughing because I had a free paper round as well, and it was those big bags that you're carrying, and then you've got to sort them and then deliver them. The papers were like that thick,
and it was admin. It wasn't just delivery. You had to literally put the leaflets in the. Yeah, it was crazy.
What was it in your kind of upbringing, DNA that you think kind of generated that appetite? Because obviously the normal kind of path is right. Go and get a job. I want to be a lawyer. I want to be whatever it might be. What was that from your kind of upbringing that really sparked that?
I think there were two things. So when I was really young, my dad always bought and sold stuff like eBay and PayPal. And, when all that was new as well, I always witnessed him and was really interested in him doing that. I think I introduced him to eBay and like PayPal, and then I watched him do it kind of thing as a kid. And I just thought that was, I don't know, I just thought it was interesting, right? You can make money out of nothing or stuff you have around the house. And so I had great exposure to that kind of thing at a really young age. My entire family is pretty entrepreneurial. And so even as I went through my teens into my early 20s, I was always surrounded by entrepreneurs. So that really carried me through, I suppose, in that mentality. But the other thing is that, and I've tracked this in my own behaviors, for whatever reason, I've always tried to do things for myself, like whether it's independence or whether it's like a streak of that was taught to me. I can't tell you how. So it's like the whole nurture nature thing. But I've always thought, if someone else can do that really well, why can't I? And if I do it myself, I'm doing it for myself. And so whether I had an agency at one point, which I was like, why would I work for an agency when I can start one? Like I had brands that I've started. Why would I work for one I can start? I don't know. I've just got that creator, I guess, mindset in me.
Is there an element of you see something and you feel the opportunity to improve it? Is that part of it as well, or is it just that is that independent kind of thought as you say?
I think I love to create things the more I've started to really think about it. I mean, even like 2 or 3 days ago, I was creating a TV show about the new version of like a Dragon's Den or Shark Tank. And, and then if you went through my ChatGPT, you'd be horrified by the amount of things and ideas that I've had. They're just constant. My brain, for whatever reason, naturally wants to create things. And actually, there's obviously loads of benefits to that, but there's also counterintuitive things. So I've only really learnt the phrase finder, minder, binder really quickly kind of thing. I am not a minder. I am not someone who's like a business as usual person, can do the same thing every day, rinse and repeat, etc. I like to search for new things. I like to find new things. I like to, bring things together. So yeah.
That's fascinating, because I'd like to kind of just focus in on the finder, minder, binder concept and maybe go through your kind of arc, because obviously the finder, binder, minder element as you go through ContentCal, you went through all of those phases. So then I guess my question is, what phase of that do you obviously enjoy the most? And talk us through that.
Yeah, I learned the hard way, in a way, that there's a very big difference between being a founder and a CEO. And CEOs are quite often, particularly at more like scale up or more established businesses, like they're minders in reality, right? They are there to make sure products work, the business works, there's an operational rhythm, they make things happen. They're not there to necessarily, not exclusively, but necessarily create a brand new product from scratch or find a new market and figure it out or invent something brand new from a technological perspective. So when I was running ContentCal, I had a COO who was fantastic, who was much more of that minder characteristic, but I had to learn how to not do stuff in a way, like not just create something new, not reinvent the pricing strategy or the product strategy. So throughout my journey, I've learned the bits that I'm really good at, and I'm good at creating, inventing, thinking things through, solving big problems, finding new solutions, all that kind of stuff. But as soon as you get into what I think of, which is right or wrong, the boring stage, which is we just need to do the same KPI meeting every Monday, and we just need to do this. That's like not my gig. And so I've learned even with JAAQ later stage, right, that it was a business that was sort of product market fit, but still quite early. So we're still creating stuff, and then it's going to get to a minder stage, and I'll know eventually, like, that bit won't be for me, but we've still got to push it through a breakthrough period. So yeah, it's a useful framework to think through, I think, as an individual, particularly when you're doing lots of different things.
No, that's it's absolutely fascinating. You know, just through my own personal experience, I can see the relevance of it. What I'd love to do now is just kind of go back to that career arc and go back, you know, after the paper round, talk us through those years all the way, because I know, you know, through our conversations that, you know, you had an agency that got you to ContentCal. Would you mind just kind of talking us through that kind of that period of your life?
Yeah. So the kind of very young entrepreneur bit, paper round, selling SIM cards, selling loads of other stuff over the course of that. I then went to university. I went to Cardiff University to study international business management. I was 18 years old at the time. Again, super passionate about business. So I was like, that's the thing I'm going to go and learn. I remember in my second year, so social media was not new, but it was newish. So Facebook was still very large and actually used a lot. Instagram was like brand new. People used BlackBerry Messenger. I think Twitter was super early kind of thing. So these were when social networks were actually more about socializing than kind of business and commerce. But it just started, that kind of business and commerce thread. And I can remember very distinctly, because I've got a photographic memory, that I was sitting at my desk on my laptop, which was like all the time anyway, and constantly thinking of things about how to make money, although I was more enjoying that university life. And I basically realized, and it was like a proper penny drop moment, 19 years old, that everything I had bought, so clothes, brands, what I chose and what I not, everything that I chose to go to in terms of like bars and restaurants was completely influenced by what I saw on social media. I didn't watch TV. There was no ads on like TV I was watching and being influenced by, because I didn't watch it. Everything I decided to do was influenced by largely Facebook at the time. And I don't know why, but I had a penny drop moment. I was like, this social media thing is not just about me liking friends' pictures. This is about generating business and demand for businesses. And so I went down this rabbit hole on the internet for like 4 hours of what is social media marketing, what are the blogs that are online, like what is it about, what, you know, are people doing this, or have I just had this like weird thought process? And it turned out at the time, so this, bear in mind, this is 2011, there was this massive community online of people, particularly in America, who were like, social media marketing is a thing, and this is real, and this is going to be huge, particularly like the likes of Gary Vaynerchuk or something like that. And I was like, okay, this has really validated to me that this is a thing. And then I spent a year at a time freelancing effectively, before I even knew what freelancing was, managing businesses in Cardiff's Facebook pages, some family friends businesses and stuff like that, like making money. I was like, this is unbelievable. Like, I'm writing social media posts for money. Like, this is hilarious. And learning how to use it and cheating the algorithms and stuff. So I did that for 2 years at university, finished uni, and then I was like, I'm going to get a job in London, because that's quite often what people do. Obviously, that's where kind of most of the gigs are, and everyone wants to go and work in the city. And I remember applying for hundreds of jobs. It was 2011, so it was post-financial crash, bear in mind, a couple of years. So they kind of bounced back a bit in the UK, but there's still very few jobs for people, particularly my age. And I got one of the first, what I'd call social media management jobs that existed in the UK. So that was Odeon Cinemas. I love film. Film was a big passion of mine. So I spent 2 years running Odeon Cinemas social media. That was great. Absolutely loved it. And then post that went to Now TV, which is like a Netflix competitor here in the UK, powered by Sky. And that was a big moment for me. So that was running social media for Now TV, which was a challenger brand to Netflix and Love Film and all these other big players that existed in the UK. But it was 40 people, or kind of 50 people max, put in this really like startup-y, crappy room at Sky's offices. Sky is this huge company here in the UK, TV company. And it was like, here's a load of money. We want to take Sky TV, which was set-top boxes like cable TV, and we want to turn it onto an internet streaming platform. Got our best people off. Sorry, my camera zooms in. 40 in a room. Go and figure it out. And so I was only there for 2 years, but between figuring it out, that 40 people turned into about 1,500, 2,000. They scaled it to, I don't know the exact number, but hundreds of thousands of customers, massive brand advertising. It was incredible. And I got the bug of like, whoa, like this is a scale up. Like I hadn't been part of anything like that before, the energy. But then as soon as it got minder territory, interesting to that arc, right? As soon as it got corporate, because it got big, I was like, I don't like this. Like, this is not my gig. I don't want to go and network with that person to get a promotion and be here for 50 years before they give me like, a reasonable salary and title. So I left. I was like, I'm off. and I was off to start a social media agency. So I did that straight away. And amazingly, Sky and Odeon became the first two clients because I kept in touch with people of that agency. I then built up a book of lots of film distributors, B2B businesses, B2C businesses, startups for about 2 or 3 years, literally running content for businesses. So typical agency stuff, right? Services. So, creating content, publishing it, running ads, doing websites, the whole shebang, really. And what I'd learned in that process, whether it was your Skies, your Odeons, your Paramounts, your really big businesses, or medium-sized companies, the process of creating content was similar, and there were patterns in it. So you've got to draft it, you've got to create it, you've got to review it, you've got to show the client, they've got to approve it, then you've got to edit it. And then eventually, once you've gone through that wrangling process, you've got to publish it. You've got to automate it into the future. You might have to do it like late in the evening or something like that. You then got to look at the analytics and the performance and see if it performed. And this cycle just went over and over again. And again, you could have been a massive company or you could have been a small business, but the process, broadly speaking, was the same. The only difference was if you're a big company, there's been more people involved. So there was like approval flows and kind of editors and whatever. And in a nutshell, over a course of 2 years, what you see behind me, the product ContentCal, I built, not as in me, but I worked with a bunch of friends and kind of close contacts to build the MVP. That kind of grew over the course of a year and put all the agency clients on it. And that was a great hack that I had, which a lot of companies didn't have at the time. But I just said to all my agency customers, use this software, sold it to a bunch of others. And then naturally, obviously, that grew into a much bigger business over time. So I'll pause there just in case there's any comments and questions and stuff. But that agency and that whole learning process and that whole period I just told you about was like 4 or 5 years, right?
Okay.
That was the process, maybe 3 or 4 years max.
So that takes us up to kind of what period of time? So that would be like 2015?
Yeah, exactly that.
Okay.
Yeah, 2015. Yeah. So there was kind of a ropey version of ContentCal that existed, but it had customers and had revenue. I had an agency which was doing really well actually for its size and shape. It was profitable at like 25 people. But the moment for me realized was I did an accelerator in 2016. So after that, and it was kind of like a juncture for me because I had this profitable business, this service-based business, had clients, had like enviable clients, right? Like massive film studios, massive brands. But I had this software platform that I was like, this has legs. Like this could be a thing. And so I did this accelerator for 3 months in London. It's called the Accelerator Academy. And that was for ContentCal. I was like, this isn't a business yet. This is a software product with a couple of people around it. And it was a 3-month process. And the process was really to teach you how to make a software company. So you learn legal, you learn sales, you learn this, you learn that. And then you got paired with a mentor. And I was paired with a chap called Colin Smith, who became an investor, our chair, and a great friend of mine now. And I came out of it and I was like, I've got to give this a go. Like, I've got to try this software company and I've got to try and morph my agency into this.
So what did you do with the agent? Because that's quite a fork in the road. You know, you're kind of like, right, you're doing professional services agency, you know, because, you know, I've been through a very similar model as well. And with agency, you're only as good as your last gig. It's a very much a people business. You're not creating IP. So, you know, that was the fork that kind of I went through. I'm like, right, I want to create IP. I want to create a product that lasts, that has legacy. You know, how were you thinking through it at that time? Was it similar?
Oh, very much so, but more messy. You know, the way you've just said it sounds like it's a really organized thought process, which it probably wasn't for you at the time in reality. Yeah, exactly. So similar for me, right? Bear in mind, I was 24, 25 when I was making these decisions, right? Pretty young and pretty inexperienced in the grand scheme of things. And so similar to you, it was like, I know this can scale. I know this has legs. I wasn't really thinking like this is acquirable at this point, but I was thinking this is more likely to be acquired than, you know, an agency for bigger money if it did happen. Knew it was riskier, but to be honest, it also just always more exciting. I want to learn how to raise money. I want to learn how to build software.
Because was that part of your mindset as well? Because, you know, you go back to your 3 kind of modules, like the scale side of it. Was that the exciting journey that you wanted to do? Because, you know, I look at the entrepreneurial world and the startup world, right? And you look at all the kind of pinnacle entrepreneurs out there. It's like, whoa, they're the heroes. You know, was that what you were kind of gravitating to? It's like, I really want to go on this journey and I want to go and see what knocking it out of the park looks like. And I want to play in the big leagues. Was that part of it as well?
2 things on that. Yeah. One was, I knew if I was, so in my 20s, I knew if I was 20 to 30 years old, so that 10-year time frame was crystallizing like immense amount of learnings. Like, how do I learn? I remember saying this to myself, 20 years, 30 years worth of work in 10 years. And to me, I was like, if I start a company, or if I start 2 companies or 3 companies, go on the journey, whether they succeed or fail, I will learn more. And so my honest worst case scenario thought was, if they don't work out and I'm 30 years old and I've gone through that, very worst case, I think I'll be able to get at least a really good job somewhere because I would
But
have gone through this stuff.
but that's amazing foresight to have at that age.
I have been told many times that I am wiser beyond my years. Yeah, I don't know why. I really don't know why, but I've
It's
always.
very methodical in the thinking. Rather than like, I'm going to put it all on. Mine was like, I'm going to put it all on black, and do you know what? I don't know what's going to happen, but we'll deal with it. I mean, the analytical side of it is so much more proactive and useful.
Yeah, I'm a highly, highly, highly analytical and strategic thinker. Again, sometimes to my detriment in a way, but so sometimes I'd over index on that versus action, and then there's a fine balance between those 2 things as well. But no, that's how I thought about it. And genuinely, the other thing, to be totally upfront as well, and I'm really passionate about this, is that I wanted to make money.
Yeah.
Like, I wanted to be like, if I make lots of cash, at the very least, I will be free, which, every entrepreneur says they want freedom. But the reality is, right, if you are financially free, at least it gives you the ability to then choose to what you do and don't want to do. And so I was very unashamed about that. I was like, no, I want to make the money. I want to live my life. I want to do the stuff I want to do. And if I don't want to do something, I don't want to do it. So that's just the reality.
I love that, because I think that's an understated purpose that people are doing this, and entrepreneurs are doing this. So what I'd love to do now is get into kind of maybe, with ContentCal into fundraising and venture, right? You've proven it out. You're going in that. What was that like? Talk us through that arc.
And specifically, Alex, what I'm wondering as we're talking about your story is know how this works. Is like venture capital firms and partners, they hate services businesses for a wide variety of reasons. How did you make that transition? Did you just all of a sudden, ContentCal is its whole thing, I'm going to go pitch this? Or did you have to go get your teeth kicked in and a few investors who say, we're not going to invest in this services business, but this ContentCal thing's interesting? Walk us through kind of that transition, because it's hard. It would be hard for her to go out to I can only imagine like your first pitch, you go out as an agency and say, oh, we want to raise money. And they're like, kid, we don't do this. Walk us through that.
I had lots of that. Yeah. I mean, so what basically happened was, when I was doing the agency, we didn't need to raise money because it was actually profitable and cash flow driven. I was very lucky in that, again, just through pure grit, I'd met so many interesting characters in London at this point, because I've been doing this for like 3 years. Let's just say it's sort of 3 years into that journey. So I had my agency and ContentCal was a thing. Lots of people introduced me to contacts. And so I met probably 4 or 5 in that 3-year period, and many more, but 4 or 5 really key angel investors who just understood the business angel investors, and they built their own businesses. They were entrepreneurs. They knew that, like, unlike VCs, the journey is not just black and white. Like, we can see you've got this agency, we can see you've got the software business, we can see where you want to take it. We'll angel invest in this part of the journey to help you go through that transition. And if the software business plays out, obviously, then you can go on the next phase of that journey. So we, over the course of that 3 or 4 years, raised about £2.5 million of angel investment. And again, bear in mind, I'm super young, didn't really know what I was doing, to kind of bridge the journey from an agency to a software company. And it did take 2 or 3 years to make that happen, in that we had an agency that was literally had retained clients, etc. We had a software business. As we lost a client, we stopped replacing them. Sometimes we thought we should, sometimes, we had all those challenges, but generally speaking, we stopped replacing them. As the software built out more and we'd raised a bit more money to put into it, because it was all drip fed. It wasn't like one round. It was like 10 angel rounds, if you know what I mean, over 3 years. We built some more features. We won some more customers. We put some salespeople in. It was like a semi-organic process for about 2.5 years, to then say, we are a software company actually now. And we still had some services revenue just dripping in, because we did, but it wasn't anything too heavy. And so, to exactly what you just said, only then was I able to go to venture and say, right, guys, we're a software business. We were about $1 million in recurring revenue at this point, pounds or dollars, I can't remember. Let's go out and hit the VC scene, because what we actually want to raise is about $2.5 million as a sort of late seed round, to really then crystallize the last part of that journey from a agency into a fully fledged software business. And I went to, I reckon, 50 to 60 VC meetings, and I can't remember exactly what year this was. In fact, I can't remember what year it was. It was 2019, so a bit later on in the journey. And every single one of them said no. And I'm not joking. Over the course of 6 months, I ran what you would call the process. You create your funnel, you've got your deck, you've got your financial model, you go to all the kind of late seed funds or mini Series A funds, and every single one of them said no. And the reason was, yeah, you were a service business, but you've morphed into this. We don't know if that's like, we don't know if you've really got the chops to build it like into the next stage of software company, or some of your revenue still comes from services, even though it was a tiny fraction. We don't like that. You get every reason for a no, as you guys will know, like in your lives, like there could be any excuse, and who knows if they're true or not. But the best thing about that journey was, I said the best thing, it was a horrendous time because we were running out of money and it was coming to an end otherwise. I met a guy called Shiv Patel, who was at Fuel Ventures, who I fund here in the UK. Very entrepreneurial. They were quite new themselves as a fund and they had lots to prove. And I love the phrase in venture, which it's painful at times, but I do love it, is that you're looking for a market of one. I only needed one fund to say yes. I didn't need 5. I mean, it would have been great if they did, but I didn't need it. If one fund says yes, you've got a starting point. And Fuel Ventures, Shiv, who kind of ran the deal, said yes, right at the end, 2 months before we're about to run out of money. And that was late 2019. And then, where were we? December 2019. Obviously, we went through a small due diligence process. The cash was going to close. I think it was February, March 2020. I presume everyone knows what happened at that point. I'll pause there, but you can piece the story together, and I'm happy to obviously talk about more. But that was our journey from bridging from like angel through to VC. So yeah.
And Alex, how early, or did it happen at all in the conversations with Fuel? Was there an expectation that once you start raising professional money, no longer angel money, but you start raising professional money, that, hey, you've pitched us this giant TAM number. Okay, we buy that. I'm assuming that your majority of your TAM, or at least greater than 50%, is probably sitting in the United States. Was there a discussion or expectation of like, hey, we're going to invest in you. We really like this, but we want you to go get this giant TAM number. And oh, by the way, that sits in the United States. Was that part of the discussions early on?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I mean, my obsession, if you like, was the States, to be honest with you. So we all knew like the UK is a great market for social media. It's quite, in marketing context, actually, the UK is quite advanced, actually, in terms of like people, it's a very developed market. However, to your point, right, the United States is enormous, much bigger. There are many more businesses. We sold to the SME and mid-market and kind of touched enterprise, but we never really went enterprise, if you know what I mean. So you're talking, I think there's like, I don't know, I can't remember the numbers, but call it X million in the UK of companies we could go after, and X 100 million we could go after in the US. And so it was an obsession. The good thing about ContentCal was that it was a free trial sign up, and the way we marketed the business, so through paid ads and all the typical stuff, but because we managed to do SEO and kind of sponsorships in articles incredibly well, and we paid influencers there are influencers of social media marketing, believe it or not, in the US to promote us, right? And we did loads of other stuff, obviously, over the course of the growth spurt. We had thousands of leads coming in, free trialing from the US. And so as soon as we sold that way, and we were doing that late 2019 as we went through that Fuel Ventures process, but as soon as we had £2.5 million drop in our bank account and an actual marketing budget and we could scale it up, we were like, whoa, like, as soon as you start spending, and it's still small really, but proper money in America, people want this. We were like, oh my God. And we were English, doing our calls late at night. And we were like, oh shit, this is a real thing. We need to figure out how we do this properly. So that was an incredible journey, because it's really hard to believe that an accountant in Kansas wants to buy your software that you've created in London. Do you know what I mean? Like in your head, it's just, now it's super possible and it's like bog standard. But even back then it was like a novelty. And then
Alex, at this stage, was the concept of product-led growth, is that even a term, or you guys just stumbled into that?
PLG as a phrase did not exist at that stage. Yeah, I think there was early signs of it, because you've got to bear in mind, like, a lot's changed since like 2020 to 2025. A lot's changed in this 5-year period. So your likes of your intercom products were quite new still. And to your point, PLG and all the kind of product analytics tools that are out there now, this wasn't a playbook, basically. I mean, it was a little bit, but it was being made up as it was going along. So we did it. I mean, to your point, how did we do it? We had a product-led growth approach where it was a free trial, really easy to use product, very self-intuitive. We had great marketing with consumer quality marketing. And quite often what we would do is we had a small team of salespeople who would do demos, and it was a one demo closed target. So it wasn't like an enterprise sales process. It was like people either buy online or it's a 30-minute call. Your goal is to close them on this call. And they quite often did, more often than not, if anything.
Because what that says to me is like you were really clear about what your ICP was. There was no kind of like wavering from that.
No, that's right. I mean, the challenge with SMB is that your ICP has become obviously so broad. It wasn't just for accountants. It wasn't just for this. It was so many different types of companies, which was amazing because actually you learned quite a lot about how all these companies use social media. But what we never tried to do, or we did early, but way early, and then we messed that up. But we never tried to go enterprise and say this is a 200K a year product and you get this much professional services bolted on. As soon as we learned it was an SMB product, we leaned in big time.
You probably saw there was a large competitor in the enterprise.
Just one or two, yeah.
That's fascinating. Talk us through kind of you, because you say that you were obsessed, or I think it was infatuated with the US. Did you start making trips out there? How did you kind of absorb that? You obviously had the kind of the leads coming in. Talk us through your relationship with the US from that point on.
Yeah, well, the fun part of this is as soon as we started to get US traction, you couldn't travel to the US because of COVID. It was literally
That's correct, yeah.
Out. So you couldn't go even if we wanted to. So for I can't remember how long it was, like 6 months maybe. We couldn't go. So what we did is we set up a team here in the UK that would work US hours basically. So we serviced that demand from here initially. And we just saw that the marketing rates were cheaper. There was much more leads to go after in different towns. So there was a whole game to be played at in the kind of PLG point to getting customers through to the UK. But as soon as you could travel, and again, I can't remember, there were all these rules around travel. Like obviously, as we know during COVID, we sent one guy from the UK who was like, I've had enough of living in my house in London and my flat or whatever. I want to go and travel the world. We were like, right, off you go. I think he went to Mexico and then he like traveled through the US. His name was Steven. And he was like our first dude out of the US. And he was just like, I don't even think you were technically allowed to do this, like to travel there for business and stuff. But he was just like living a new life. But imagine that job. I think he was like in his early 20s. Laptop, travel, suitcase. I do 10 demos a day, and I'm done. And I'm closing deals left, right, and centre because it was. I mean, he must have had a great time. I think, and I hope I haven't kept in touch with him as much. But again, as soon as we learned that, so again, we couldn't hire in the US, couldn't move to the US. I travelled out a couple of times, particularly to big events like Social Media Marketing World and a couple of others when you're allowed to travel too. But I sort of also realized that in our game, the sales and marketing job was the US. There wasn't much for me personally to actually do that. They didn't need a CEO character to do anything. We needed salespeople there realistically. So I think by the end we had 3 or 4 people out in the US literally doing what this guy was doing, but more permanently based when things had settled. And it was the beauty of it was predictable. It was like you get this many leads for this much money. You're going to get this many calls roughly drop in your diary. Your goal is to close this many. The close rate was 50%. And it was awesome. Yeah, absolutely loved it.
Amazing. And I think what I'd love to do now is just transition to the kind of I think series, A maybe, and then all the way to kind of exit. Because I think everybody's just really fascinated with that story.
Yeah, I think the coolest thing about this part of the journey was, at this point, everything was it wasn't 100% predictable, but it pretty was. Like we knew the levers to pull in the business to grow it. Didn't make it easy for any stretch, right? And we were also going through that transition at the time where we were starting to think, should we go more upper mid-market? Should we raise our prices? Do we need to add these features? So there was all these complexities. I don't want to make it sound like it was easy. It was hard to keep doing it. But by the end of 2020, I think we tripled our revenue. So we got to like 3 and a bit million recurring revenue. We then were like, right, we want to raise, it was a small Series A in the grand scheme of things. I think it was about $7 million, so 5 and a bit million pounds. Series A in the UK at that point, that size. So it still would have been a small Series A at the time, but we were like, let's put our foot down for another 18 months, not change a load of stuff, not do a load of different stuff, but like really grow for another 18 months. And then we would do a Series B in 20, whatever that would have been, a couple of years later. And then we would have positioned for an exit. Like to us, that was like get to Series B, and then I think we're big enough. And so we did our kind of Series A in March 2021 because we had traction and it was predictable, and Fuel Ventures reinvested, and then a fund called Guinness Ventures invested with us. it wasn't particularly hard to do. It was, bear in mind, cash was flowing at this point. If you remember, 2020, 2021, post-COVID shock, there was money, really
Yeah.
sloshing around.
Market was good at that time. Yeah.
Yeah, Hopin, all these other businesses were getting these wild valuations and funding. So we closed in March, April 2021. And then I remember we started hiring some sort of more senior leaders just to come into the business to kind of run certain departments, as you grow, basically. So we got to a headcount of about 80-ish people at this point, maybe 90. And then, what was that, March, April, May or June 2021, I had this email from a guy called Justin Wang at Adobe. And it was an Adobe email address, but it was to one of my old emails. So we had like ContentCal.io, ContentCal.co, then we eventually got the .com. And I never checked the .io email inbox, but I did for some reason this day. And it was this email. And it was like, hey, Alex, I'm Justin from Adobe's corporate development team. It said something like, we partner, we do M&A, we're interested in the space, love to set up a chat with you. Nothing else.
A cold inbound email to a email box you don't usually check.
Correct. Wow. So anyone tells you cold email doesn't work, it clearly does. And there was no LinkedIn stalking. There was nothing with this. It was a cold. It was exactly as you just described it. Obviously, I went to LinkedIn to look at this guy's profile. It was like an egg or whatever it is, like an avatar, like a thingamajiggy photo. It didn't look like a real person. But I was like, I'm going to try. So I emailed him back, and we backward and forwards a couple of times, and eventually got on this call. And it still just didn't seem real. Bear in mind, people work from home and stuff like that still at this point. And did this call, just did introductions, stuff, usual stuff. And then kind of thought nothing of it in reality, other than this could be amazing. Adobe might want to partner with us more than anything else. And then another 2-ish weeks passed, and I got this email back saying, I'd love to bring a product manager of our team in to see ContentCal and check it out. And I was like, obviously, I'm going to say yes. So just went on, did the demo. We showed a lady called Michaela who ended up working with later. So it's so surreal. Looked at the product. These were half-an-hour calls again, which in the UK, I don't know, this is a cultural difference default, but we quite often should do hour calls even if they don't need to be, which I don't do anymore. These were like transactional 25-minute calls.
That's a US symptom for sure,
which is a great thing, I think, in some ways. I did the next call, and then basically these random calls, once pretty much like clockwork, every 2 weeks were being like emailed to me, like, can we show you the product to this person? Can we just talk to you? Like, that was the thing I found hilarious. So this was like them running what I think now I realize is an amazing buyer process, because they were warming me up without me realizing at all. Literally, we'd go on calls and they'd just be like, just want to touch base. How's things going? Any changes on your product strategy? This was for like 2 months. And then within that, I then started to obviously poke a little bit more and ask questions like, why do you want to talk to me, basically? Like, what's this about? And they were super close to their chest. Like, we're really interested in the space. We're just checking it out. We really like what you're doing. And they were world-class at this process. So we're talking like July, August time now, 2021. I was like to the board, Adobe keep reaching out to me for these conversations. It's really interesting. It's really exciting. I was getting quite excited because I started to see between the lines, like where this could go. And then mid-August or throughout August, more and more of these calls would go in, more and more people would turn up. They did this amazing thing, which is, I don't know if it was on purpose or not, where I was asked to do a demo. I had COVID on the day, and it was only me and like 5 other people from Adobe on the call. I went on the call, and there was like 50 to 60 people who turned up, and I was like, oh shit. Like, and I bet I was sweating, but luckily they couldn't see it. It was horrible. And I was like, whoa, this is a bit serious. So I did the demo, did my thing, lied down afterwards, just like, oh my God. And then that's when I realized it was serious. So then they put in their next catch-up call, and I was like, guys, you got to tell me what's going on. I can't just keep turning up to these things. It's too much. And they're like, right, we're looking at the space. We want to make an acquisition in the space. We're really looking at you seriously. I think they said something like, you're one of 3 companies that we're really in process with, which now in hindsight, I don't know if I believe or not. I never asked them in the end, actually, but I was like, you're one of 3, and we got to keep this process running. This is how it runs for us. And I said, I can do that. Naturally, that's amazing, super flattering, incredible, like, to go through this process with you. Like, I'm really excited by it, but I've got to raise a Series B. I've got investors. I need to get on with my business plan. If we raise a Series B, I'm going to be doing it in Q4, Q1, Q4 of this year, Q1 of the next year. I can't wait, for you guys to tell me whether this is a thing or not. And I said it really politely. It wasn't like a jarring thing, but I had to create some time pressure. So the Series B thing for me was not made up. It was like, we're going to go raise a Series B. So they then took that internally and obviously, again, like created some natural friction in the process because we didn't have another bidder. It was literally like, you want to buy us, the time is now, guys, basically. It created a snowball effect, was like, right, they obviously went and did their thing internally, came back, okay, if you're going to do this, we're going to do it, it's with you. I was like, okay, cool. Then you go into the price negotiations. There's a whole like thing that obviously have to do with it, all of that as well. But it went from like casual-ish tone to like, I was like, we need to do this in 2 weeks if you want to do it. And they were like, we're going to do it in 2 weeks as well. So it was this alignment thing that happened.
Did it
And then
ever happen in person, Alex? Did you actually go to San Jose, or is this all over Zoom?
in the entire process of selling my company, I met nobody other than
That's
one person.
amazing.
So I was asked to go. So after the deal was signed and literally just before we actually closed it, I was asked to travel to the Adobe Shoreditch office to meet, I think it was the marketing director of the UK office, who had nothing to do with the process, by the way. So he was like, I don't know why I'm meeting you, but I've been told I need to meet you to check you're a real person. So I sat there and had lunch. And he's a lovely guy. His name is Simon Morris. We had lunch and then I went home. And bear in mind, I'm talking peak COVID. I'm talking lockdowns. London is not open.
Mm.
And then, yeah, I didn't meet anybody face to face. It actually happened. Yeah, it was wild. But the kind of expedited version of the story was like two weeks to lock it in. We then signed terms. We then did a 3-month due diligence process from September 21 to December 21, which was grueling to say the least. It was really hard, which I could go into. And then we closed December 2021 and boom, the business was sold. So,
Wow.
yeah,
What a ride.
it's crazy.
What was the, because we align on this where we like to talk about the human side of things, because I think there's this narrative and market which is it's easy and look at that, and I think it's back to the kind of the entrepreneurial kind of heroes that people look at. But I want to talk about the truth of this now, and you've been through that process. What was the hardest bit? There must have been days where you were just like, what is going on? You've obviously got COVID, the cloud of COVID over you as well. That cannot have been easy. You've got people's, mortgages and you're supporting that as well.
Mm-hmm.
And also you're having to, what I call, live in the multiverse, where to the company, you're kind of like, yeah, this is great. We're going to do a Series B. But then on the other side of it, you're also kind of like talking to Adobe, and you're having to know what multiverse you're on at any second of any day. So
That's a great phrase.
what was the hardest bit of this? And just talk about the human side of it, and what you learn and all of that, because I think that's really fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, it all sounds so rosy, like when you sort of go through what I've just talked about, but there were points literally from day one of founding the company through to the day of selling it and well beyond that were absolutely horrendous, and I love the multiverse phrase that you've just said, because it really does talk that's a perfect definition, I would say, of being an entrepreneur. So I can range these right from having an agency to being pretty much out of cash, even though we had customers, we had clients, and a client was going to pay us payroll on a Friday. And if they didn't pay us the payroll on a Friday, the money wouldn't have gone out. And I woke up in the morning, this much money was supposed to be on my bank account. It wasn't. Having a panic attack at 5 a.m. Half an hour later, the money arrived and we made payroll. Right? That's one example. That was a huge mistake, which I should never have allowed to happen, but we did. And you don't know what you don't know at the time. So stress of that, for example, the stress of having 2 months cash left when you've spoken to every VC in town and they've all said no, and you think that you're done for. And really what you're thinking is, I'm managing decline at this point. And then boom, someone comes in. The stress of the M&A process when you haven't been through one before, and bear in mind, this is like a David versus Goliath situation. This is 80 person company within ContentCal. There were only 6 people internally who knew this deal was happening in my management team. Everyone else in the business had no idea. Adobe must have had hundreds of people working on the deal, in reality, advisors, etc. So you would do 7:30 to 8 a.m. calls with lawyers. You do a few hours in the morning of the work you needed to do within the business. You in tandem do any prep you needed to do for stuff in the afternoon. You would then have a briefing call at 1 o'clock, which is with the lawyers and the M&A guys we work with to make sure we were prepared. And then from 2 p.m., 3 p.m. through to 8 p.m., 9 p.m., you would do calls with Adobe presenting, this is how the product works. This is our marketing strategy. You have to present everything you've ever done, why you think about things. And you're you're founding calls from 50 people, some of which are really close to the deal, and some of which are just there. They've just been told they need to turn up. And then you've got people who support the deal and detract from the deal and think you're great and maybe think you're average. And you have all these challenges. And we had a massive one, which was, we've got to get these 2 employees back. And I was like, because they've developed a lot of the code and I had to figure that out. The highs and lows of an M&A deal in a business context at that level of high stakes. And also you've told all your shareholders, because you have to, this deal is going to, you think it's going to happen. Like you said, the multiverse is a great phrase. I had some of my worst days ever, throughout that process. And you've got life as well, right? This isn't just business. You have your own locked away and you have 2-bedroom flat in London. You can't go out and you're not eating well. The stress is high. I was smoking and drinking. It was all encompassing. But it happened, and so I think it's hard to describe. I came out of the whole journey from literally 23 starting it through to selling it a different person. And then the 3 years of my earn-out to where I am now, which is sort of a 7-month, 8-month period after that, maybe 9-month period after that. So it's still kind of fresh to me, to be honest with you. The human evolution I've been through, if you like, throughout those periods is enormous. I'd say I'm a completely different person, in fact. So it's incredible to have that level of accolade and success and financial outcome and all that jazz, but you've got to go through your human processing at the same time. Otherwise, as a lot of us know, and I did have this problem, but you end up depressed basically because you lose your identity and there's all that other stuff. So I think the thing is like, I often hear comparisons to like people who make it in like the music industry really young. So if you're a 20-year-old star like a Justin Bieber and you blow up that young, and then how do you ever match that peak again? You got to really go through your own psycho process, if you like, to level set who you are and what you're about. Because it's not just about one deal. It's not just about making money. It's not just about this. To come out the other side of it as a rounded, all-encompassing entrepreneur and human being. So, yeah, a long-winded answer, but best days, worst days, middle days, like you said, multiverse, wonderful definition for that whole process.
No, and it's fascinating. And I think what this nice is now is a nice kind of connection to what you're doing now. So I'd love you to kind of just maybe kind of talk about JAAQ a little bit, what it does. I'd love you just to kind of, tell the audience about that.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely had, another word to describe it really, kind of like a mini mental breakdown post selling. And it wasn't just a result of selling. There was lots of other things going on in my life. And so I had my first encounter with a mental health thing, which was depression. And I didn't know what the hell it was. I had no idea. Bear in mind, I'm this like high octane, high optimism entrepreneur person. So I was like, what the hell was going on with me? And it took me 6 to 7 months to even figure out like what was happening. And it was all up in here, And so I then kind of, as I do, go into rabbit holes. It was like, well, why did it take me that long to figure out what was wrong? There was an answer. It was a combination of therapy and exercise and whatever else I did. And then it took me another 6 months to kind of get my balance back. And then I was like, and I went on a whole personal journey and I was like, no, I feel great. And I understand my mind, my behaviors, my physical fitness, my diet, my exercise. I went on like a rebirthing exercise, if you like. And I was like, why didn't most people, you don't hear anyway, that most people, when they go through a challenge, there's no process to overcome this. Not to say there would be a fixed process, but there's no express way of overcoming it, let's say. And then I found this business, JAAQ. So bear in mind, I've been angel investing a lot, and I was introduced to this company, JAAQ. And it was, I mean, in its first instance, when I came across it, this was a year and a half ago-ish now. It was kind of like a Netflix for well-being. So I had all these amazing celebrities, all these amazing doctors talking really openly about, and naturally, importantly, about mental health stuff. This is what depression is. This is chemically what happens when it happens to you. This is how diet is, experienced throughout that. And these things are really good for you. And it's not just me as a doctor talking to you. Have a conversation with this Formula One driver, who's one of the best Formula One drivers in the world, who's also had a challenge with this kind of subject. And this is what they did to overcome that. And all these other topics attached to kind of health and well-being. And what I realized was when I saw that, I was like, well, this is like answering these challenges or this express way of learning through the power of content, which is a space obviously I knew really well, right? So this wasn't a long-winded doctoral kind of analysis of my situation. This wasn't a leaflet. This wasn't a trip to the doctors. This wasn't a random YouTube video either. This was an informative, engaging, vertical video format from a celebrity or a doctor telling me very concisely and articulately what this thing is, whatever that subject might be. And I was like, this is like a no-brainer, isn't it? Like if I had that, at least I would have known what was going on with me. And the world is challenging, right? We know that people are dealing with anxiety and stress and things like that more than ever before. Now, at least I could do something about it. And it would have made me myself choose my own action much quicker. Because it wasn't the thing for me was, it wasn't the here's what you need to do next, which was the hard part. It was the what the hell is going on. It took me months to figure out. So long story short, when I saw this idea, I was like, this is a massive global problem. This is a massive global potential solution. How do we scale it? So I invested in it in this, August 2024. Where are we now? We are January 2026. So I invested in it. Then I advised it for 6 months. We raised some money through my friends, family, and some of my venture contacts. I was then asked to join it as CEO, which was pretty cool. I had never thought, leaving Adobe or in general, to be honest, I'd ever be a CEO of another company, if that makes sense. But I thought my skill set is really attuned to this. I'm really passionate, as you can probably tell, just the way I'm talking about solving this problem. I could do this, not forever. This is not me being an entrepreneur in a way, although I am, but this is me coming in, dropping my skill set in, building value for the period of time I can do it. And then whether we sell it or whether we do whatever we're going to do with it, or, when my time is up, someone else is there to run it. Like, I can get this to a really good stage. And I think it's a great thing to do. And you tend to find with extra entrepreneurs, you want to do your business stuff still, but you want to create some impact in the world. And for me, this is the perfect combination of that, really.
That's amazing.
Alex, if you could travel back to that really critical inflection point where you had the services business and you had ContentCal and you're trying to make that transition, and you're starting to talk to venture capital firms about, hey, can we really make a go of this? If you could travel back to that really important time period and have a conversation with your then current self, what advice would you give you at that really critical junction?
Probably two things. One would be like, go away for a 3-day solo thing, or kind of just go for a coffee shop every day on your own for 3 or 4 days and just really think through what you want from this journey. Because I didn't do that. I kind of just worked at it and worked at it and worked at it, and it sort of eventually sold itself. What I didn't do was consciously, inwardly reflect what I wanted from the business journey and what I wanted from it in general. Was it a service journey? Was it a software journey? And really think about it. Really think about it. Not just like make some notes, but like really just go in on yourself before you do everything else, basically. And, find a mechanism for doing that. And then the second thing would be, which I did do, but I didn't do it as accurately as I think I should have. Go and find some people that have been through that before and really, really, really sound them out about it. Like really, again, not just a few questions from a few people. And then make your decision as like what you're going to do it with extreme conviction and do it with clarity. Because if I'd have done that, what I've just described versus what I ended up doing, the transition might have taken 8 months, maybe 9 months, 12 months, rather than 2 years to go through that software, services to software business journey. And I think most entrepreneurs go through versions of those types of challenges, right? In reality, multiple times, quite often through the journey. So these inflection points to your client are like so important. And now I value thinking time more than I value doing time ever. Because once you've thought enough about something, you have clarity and you have conviction. And I really think it's undervalued time for people. I think people will think things through a bit, maybe come back to it, and then action is the thing we need to do. I think you should spend twice as long thinking about something than doing something.
Totally agree. I want to go to, obviously this is Scaling Stateside. So one of the things I'd like to go to is that the acquisition has happened. Obviously there's kind of retention for you going to Adobe. Talk us through that, and then your exposure to America, and I think culturally working, what that was, what you learned from that phase.
Yeah, that was. Do you know what? That was one of the most amazing things I've ever done, if I'm honest with you. And it never feels like it when you're doing an earnout at the time, because you want to be free and you want to be doing your thing. So I had a 3-year earnout at Adobe, and my gig was to integrate ContentCal into a series of products across Adobe. Get that done, like as quickly and as efficiently possible, And then the beauty of my role afterwards, actually, or the way we did that, because we did the integration quite quickly, was it was kind of like, okay, you're actually here to roam. You're here to figure out what you might else, if you want to be at Adobe and you've got another. I think we did the integration in like 6 months, which was like a record for Adobe, and then we had to do another one just because of the way some things were built, and then we integrated some other products and stuff like that. But basically, once we'd done what they really wanted it to do, it was like, we're going to give you like a number of things we want you to do, but other than that, go and speak to people and find out what else you can do at Adobe. Bear in mind, this is a very big company. I hadn't worked at a senior level in these big companies. I didn't know that was a thing. I was like, you're going to pay me to like figure out what I would do. I'm really used to task oriented things. So I had an incredible experience. What was really interesting about it was, I don't know whether it is about California, the people that work there, the way they work, the level of intelligence, the technology skill sets and product marketing skill sets in California are second to none. They are the best in the world by a country mile. And there are people there from all over the world, right? But the machine there is just incredible at building world-class, globally, dominant and efficient product technology businesses. So I learned how that happens, the thought processes that go into it. They don't think, oh, we'll scale here and then we'll go there. They're like, okay, if we're going to build this product, how do we get it to be made? How do we get it into Japan, India, UK, all at the same time, in an efficient manner? And we spend this much 100 million on it, not like this 2 million on it. It's like, how do we go for it and do it properly? So that was, a couple of things. Culturally, it's so funny because the language is shared, but it is a very different way of working. So it's more transactional. We had 25-minute calls, for example, at Adobe, which I just learned, that's just the rules of the game. There's less chit chat, it's actually kind of straight into business, and maybe there's some chit chat at the end of it. So those are some cultural nuances. But I think the biggest takeaway, honestly, and the thing that I am sort of jealous of in a way, and I wish there was more of this here in the UK, was just the absolute appetite to dominate. If we're going to do something, this is what it's going to be. This is researched. This is how it's going to look. This is what it's going to take to build it. I want the best people in the world to work on this. I want it done in 6 months. I want it marketed to 1 million customers within that period. Of those 1 million customers, I think 500,000 will convert. I want to generate this level of ARR, and I want to do that across 5 countries at the same time. Boom. And that only exists in that, well, from my experience there. And the ability for that not to be just, I want that. A year later, it's been done. I cannot, if I could box that up from a business perspective and put that in everywhere in the world, can you imagine the economic output that would happen? Like, I'm even talking about it, thinking everyone's only to move back to Silicon Valley kind of thing. It's just the best. It's just the best. You can't, it doesn't exist anywhere else in the world. So yeah, that to me was just both a learning and an amazement in a way. I'm amazed by it.
Alex, this has been really great. You have a fantastic entrepreneurial founder story. Thanks for sharing it with us. As we kind of wrap up here, is there any advice? I mean, you've had an amazing journey. You're obviously very active in the entrepreneurial community, and you're an investor. Is there any advice you would give founders who are in the earlier stages and kind of have aspire to have a similar journey? Is there any kind of advice or guidance you would give them at a macro level?
I think two or three things. One would be, if you're young enough, free enough, and have the appetite, go and move to America. It doesn't have to be forever, but go there for 2, 3, 4 years and go and experience it, because just the opportunity there is enormous at the end of the day. It is just enormous. And the other kind of really big thing is the money is there, right? The capital there is unmatched anywhere on earth. So one would be 100%. And I didn't do that. And I so wish I did, for what it's worth. I kind of did a lot of travel there and was there for periods of time, but I never went there for like a year or two and just absorbed it. And I'm not dead yet, so maybe that will happen. So that would be one. I think the other one would be, if you've got an idea for a product and a business and you're really passionate about it and you've really stress tested it and it's something you know a lot about and you've got the means to do it, you've got the energy and the time, just go for it. Like, I didn't know what I was doing for 10 years. I learned an awful lot over that 10-year period, and I accumulated learnings and knowledge. But when I was 23 and I started out, I didn't know anything about anything in reality. And so if you've got that passion and drive, really do go for it, because it's one of the most satisfying journeys you'll ever go on. And I think the other thing is, and the last thing I wish I said to myself in a way, was take it seriously. So take it really, really seriously. Like, I took my business journey like it was life or death, like it was serious. I wish I sprinkled a little bit more enjoyment, shall we say, and softness into that journey, only because I've witnessed people be really successful and not as serious as I was all the time. And so I think I was almost like a performance of myself for 10 years in that capacity, if you know what I mean, and kind of reduced some of my normal personality, which has come out later in life, weirdly. So do it, be serious, but, you know, try and enjoy it even on the bad days, and bring yourself to it. That's the main thing.
Wise words, mate.
Alex, this has been really great. We very much appreciate you sharing your story with the Scaling Stateside community. Wishing you all the best with JAAQ, and we look forward to speaking with you, hear your story at JAAQ on the back end as well.
Thanks so much, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much, mate.